/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening to you. You're with GB News. Free Speech Nation up next. First, though, a look at the headlines at 7 o'clock. And we start in Germany, where prosecutors have named the man suspected of carrying out a knife attack that killed 3 and injured 8 as Issa al-H. The 26-year-old Syrian national is accused of being a member of a terrorist organisation and sharing Islamic State ideology. He's also been charged with 3 counts of murder and attempted murder. The suspect, who had reportedly applied for asylum in the country, handed himself in to police following that attack. A church service, meanwhile, has been taking place today in Germany to remember and pay respects to those who lost their lives. The victims include a 56-year-old woman and 2 men aged 56 and 67. 4 of those wounded remain in a life-threatening condition in hospital. Officials from Hezbollah insist the militant group isn't looking for a full-scale war after a rocket and drone attack against Israel earlier this morning. It was in retaliation for the killing of a top commander last month. Israel launched preemptive strikes in return on southern Lebanon in what it called an act of self-defence. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will take all measures necessary to defend itself. We're also hearing from the Reuters news agency tonight that the Gaza ceasefire proposal has been rejected by Hamas, saying the Israeli conditions do not meet the deal that was struck on the 2nd of July. So at this stage doesn't appear to be any progress on that. Bring you more on that as we get it. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, a British man is missing, feared buried under the rubble after a Russian missile hit a hotel used by journalists in the east of the country. He was part of a 6-strong team from Reuters, the news agency. A Ukrainian and a US national were also injured. Reuters have released a statement. They say they are urgently seeking more information, working with authorities in Kramatorsk and supporting the colleagues and their families. Here, the Prime Minister is set to warn that things will get worse in the UK before they get better. In a speech on Tuesday, Sir Keir Starmer's likely to say there are no quick fixes to remedy what he'll call the rubble and ruin left by the Conservatives. He'll also continue to argue that the last Tory government concealed the true state of public finances. The Conservatives have responded, saying Labour are fabricating a financial black hole to clear the way for tax rises. And they're also calling the Prime Minister to reverse cuts to winter fuel payments. Immigration enforcement officers have detained 75 suspects, suspected of illegally working as part of a week-long crackdown. Officers visited more than 200 businesses in the past week, particularly car washes, with over 120 receiving civil penalties for employing illegal workers. The Home Secretary says the government will make sure that those who break the law face the full force of the law. Businesses found to be employing people illegally face fines of up to £45,000 per worker for the first offence and then £60,000 for any repeat offenders. Well, a Royal Navy warship has conducted a major drugs bust in the Caribbean. Cocaine with a street value of more than £40 million has been seized and 3 alleged smugglers have been handed over to US authorities. So far this year, HMS Trent has seized close to 7 tonnes of drugs. Police say they have made 38 arrests tonight and recovered 4 knives on the first day of the Notting Hill Carnival in West London. More than 7,000 police officers are on duty on the streets with around 1 million people set to attend. A man, believed to be in his 20s, has been stabbed, though his injuries aren't life-threatening. And finally, some brighter news. A World War II veteran celebrating her 102nd birthday has become Britain's oldest parachutist after leaping from a plane in East Anglia. This was the moment she took that leap. Manette Bailey marked the milestone with the skydive and raised over £10,000 for charity. Good for her. Despite admitting the jump was a bit scary, she encouraged others in their 80s and in their 90s to keep going and never give up. Well, it's not the first time she's pulled off a daredevil stunt. There you can see her relieved face at the relief of 102 years old there. For her 100th birthday, she drove a Ferrari on a racetrack around Silverstone. Who knows what she'll do for 103. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welsh librarians are told to avoid racist buildings, puberty blockers are banned in Northern Ireland, and an Australian judge rules that sex is changeable. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and of course we'll have the latest from those lovable culture warriors whose motto is "Be kind or else." Coming up on the show tonight, who is to blame for the riots following the Southport stabbings? Was it social media? We'll discuss this with barrister Sam Foles, who blames far-right tropes, and free speech campaigner Toby Young. We're going to go down under. We're going to speak to the CEO of Giggle, who recently lost a landmark case. And has the decline of religion led to the rise in wokeness? Author and cultural writer Helen Pluckrose joins me in a short while. And, of course, I've got my fabulous comedian panellists tonight, who are Leo Kearse and Paul Cox. Hello, both.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Are you happy, Leo?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Good, I'm always worried about you.
Happy as a Scottish person can be in August.
Yeah, it's not necessarily possible. Have you had a good week, Paul?
I have.
Yeah?
Just drove past the Notting Hill Carnival.
And was it fun?
Lively.
Was it?
Parts of it looked like Millwall versus Millwall, but it looked like a lot of fun to me.
Well, I'm glad it's lively, because if a carnival isn't lively, something is going seriously.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, good for them.
Precisely.
OK, we've got an audience here, so we may as well use them. Let's get a question from Don. Who's Don?
Here I am.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Not so bad, Don. We could talk about this all night. Let's get the question.
It's like a well, it's a question that often keeps me awake at night. It's, should librarians hold meetings in racist buildings?
Yeah, it is a worry.
Very important question.
And I'm sure most people saw this story because it's obviously decolonisation. People are at it again. And they've basically advised libraries across Wales that in order to become anti-racist, you've got to avoid racist buildings. And I think they mean buildings that have a connection to someone who wants was connected to the slave trade or that. Not that the buildings themselves are racist.
Yeah, it's not like if you look at them on Google Maps, they're going to like lay out in a swastika shape.
Not like that, no.
No, these are. I mean, it's a ridiculous idea. It's taking systemic racism, which says that systems are imbued with racism, and it's actually transplanting it into the bricks and mortar of a building. It's insanity.
What is it about librarians, right? There's a real problem with activist woke librarians who are, they were caught hiding books. At the British Library in London, there was a decolonisation working group who decided to put all these authors on a watch list if they were vaguely connected to the slave trade. And they even said, honestly, this working group said that the building, the main building of the British Library was problematic because it resembles a battleship. And therefore, that's colonial. Well, these people are
totally
insane.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, there's a good point about librarians, though. What is it? I mean, their whole career is based around them speaking and no one else being allowed to.
Yeah,
so they're all actually secret dictators, aren't they?
There's an authoritarian element to wanting to become a librarian. But I hate this idea of them hiding shelves or lecturing you about them. Just put the books back on the shelf. That's it. That's all I want you to do.
Yeah, and this is all to do with, I think it's not critical race theory, is it? But it's critical white studies.
Yeah.
Which I don't think means they're so critical we need to do it immediately.
No.
They are much more about, being criticising white people, which Leo and I hate ourselves.
You're a paragon of whiteness, aren't you? I mean, look at you.
I'm quite white.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've got an excuse. I'm from Scotland. But and this is all dressed up as anti-racism. And when they say anti-racism, what they mean is a lot of racism, because it's specifically looking at people and judging them based on the colour of their skin, and making people go through these weird rituals. Like if you go into a building, if you're giving a lecture in a building that's supposedly racist or got a racist history, which most buildings do because they're built 100 years ago when more people were racist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you go into one of these buildings to give a lecture, you've got to acknowledge the racist history and apologise for it. It reminds me of doing shows in Australia. There'd be somebody before the show who'd come out and be like, so we want to acknowledge that this was built on Aboriginal land and blah blah blah, and we apologise and we
before comedy
respect
shows?
Before the comedy show, and then obviously I'd go out and make fun of it. But they were, if they were that sorry about it, they'd give the land back.
Yeah,
it's like, don't dress it up as this. Don't get Aboriginal people excited that they're going to get their land back and then not do it. You know what I mean?
What do they do in a place like Qatar? They acknowledge that this building was built by slaves yesterday. Do they say is that what happened?
There's a dead one over there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get a question from Nicola. Where's Nicola?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Should we accept the Taliban's treatment of women?
I mean, Nicola, I'm hoping you're going to say no, right? I mean, this was quite shocking, wasn't it, this news this week? And obviously it's the Taliban, so what do you expect? But basically women in Afghanistan have been banned now from speaking in public. And there were these pictures going around online of the women, everyone completely veiled over, not even any element of the face left. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise that the Taliban are deeply, grotesquely misogynistic. They really obviously are. But is this a problem that the international community is really dealing with or even addressing?
Keir Starmer will be, because that's extreme misogynist, as you point out. So Keir Starmer would have them all jailed. This is the whole, what come first?
Yeah.
Of course, this all emanates from our abandonment, the US and UK and the West abandonment of Afghanistan just a few years ago under Joe Biden. We just left £4 billion worth of kit there and just left them to it. And of course, if you leave them to it, it's gone right back to where it was, which was the Dark Ages. And I say the Dark Ages by comparison with our culture in the West. Of course, against the backdrop of their own culture, it's perfectly normal. But we don't look at it through that lens. Our paradigm is much, much different. And the way they treat women to us is abhorrent. We can't understand it. We don't understand it at all.
I mean, there's a real problem with cultural relativism, isn't there? I mean, I've interviewed Iranian journalists on this, and they were talking about, the women in Iran tearing their veils off, burning them in the street, dancing. The courage it takes to do that is intense, because they could actually be killed. They could actually be imprisoned. And these journalists were saying, but where are the Western feminists? Where are people speaking up? Where are the left in the UK? Where are they?
Well, The Guardian is running opinion pieces saying, oh, well, actually, veiling women is a feminist thing to do.
Right.
But actually, I mean, I think there could be advantages to veiling women, not just the ugly ones, but it makes women harder to hit with a plate in Nando's. So that is going to give
Leo,
them...
if people don't know the story you're alluding to there, it just sounds psychotic. but there is
a Muslim man recently hit a woman in the face with a plate in Nando's.
Okay, there you go. Context,
so
context solved.
That's the context to that. But yeah, I mean...
But do you think there's an issue with, like, you know, the Labour Party currently saying they want to talk about the definition of Islamophobia, which could mean and at the same time they want to tackle extreme misogyny. But there's a lot of extreme misogyny within certain elements of the Islamic community.
Yeah.
But they can't address that because that would be Islamophobic, right? Am I wrong about this?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have a tough time. I mean, Islamophobia doesn't work as a concept because you've got to be able to criticise religions and ideas, and also, you know, Islam is a sort of form of societal organisation and structure and politics and everything. It's not just a religion. So, you know, as you can see in Iran or Afghanistan, it's not as if they've got like a secular state and people just go to, you know, the mosque. It's part of the way the country is run.
Paul, isn't it also a little bit patronising to suggest, oh, you know, you can't criticise Islam because, I mean, the implication is that Muslims are uniquely kind of combustible, whereas actually all of us, surely, should have our beliefs ridiculed, criticised. I mean, that's part of living in an open and free society.
Absolutely. I'm a professional comedian, believe it or not. And we should, and the whole point is that we should be able to openly criticise or make fun of anything, you know, within reason. OK, I accept there might be some reason, but everything should be fair game. I really don't know where we go with this. You can already see through the advertising campaign, this is going to protect that part of the community. There's nothing in the advertising campaign about misogyny or extreme misogyny, which is yet to be defined, by the way. And who's defining it could be a worry as well.
Well, I might add that isn't Labour guilty of extreme misogyny for their treatment of Rosie Duffield? And the fact that Keir Starmer hasn't even met with her, hasn't even apologised, should they be sort of putting the microscope on themselves?
They should be. I think Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, any of them, Jess Phillips, should start every day by apologising for everything they've done.
OK, well, that's a nice, balanced view. But obviously, when it comes to the Taliban, Afghanistan, there's nothing we can do about it. But we should criticise it, obviously. Anyway, got a question from Bev.
Hello.
Bev. Hello.
And my question is, do you think that public opinion has changed on puberty blockers?
That's a really interesting one, because this is Northern Ireland now have banned puberty blockers. Do you think it's going in the right way, Bev?
I do.
Because a lot of people weren't on board at first, but then we had the Cass review, and that's kind of been a bit of a game changer. And now, finally, Northern Ireland, they've realised, you know, drugging kids who are overwhelmingly statistically autistic or gay or just confused, trying to drug them and sort of heterosexualise them effectively isn't really a progressive thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, there's all this fuss about puberty blockers and should be given to children, but I've been taking them since I was a little girl, and I'm absolutely fine.
You are?
But no, I mean, it seems obvious. It's like one of those things. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to do a gender studies degree to work out or be a doctor to know that giving hormones and puberty blockers and drugs to confuse children is a terrible idea.
Right.
And the only upside I can see of it is all these liberal parents who I don't like them anyway. So I want them to have a horrible family life, and I want them to have awkward Christmases, and I want them to have their children saying, "Why did you let me do this in 10 years' time?"
Well, actually, within that, there is a serious point, isn't there? Which, you know, in years to come, it's going to be all sorts of lawsuits about the kids saying, why on earth did you let me take these drugs?
Well, that's exactly what's going to happen, and these parents are going to have some big questions to answer, because puberty blockers are for, you know, even within the Cass report, they said that there is the minutest benefit for the minutest percentage of people out there.
There's no evidence for their usefulness. You know,
So what that does mean, very likely, as this is now a scientific report, is that there will be tens of thousands of children, potentially, that will be affected by this. And, you know, it used to be that these parents that you would talk of would have, like, a silly little dog to carry around with to prove that they were liberal. Now they've got to have a trans kid, and it's going to affect them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. And some liberals, like Megan Fox, like all 3 children.
Impossible.
Like, I mean, that's like the statistical odds. She should buy a lottery ticket. That's just insane, the statistical odds of that. It's really ruined things for former child soldiers in Africa, because it used to be that a helicopter would land and Madonna would get out and you'd have a wonderful life, be taken off for a wonderful life in Hollywood. And now, you know, the helicopter lands, Charlize Theron gets out and you get taken off to Hollywood, but 6 months later, you got your hair in pigtails and she's talking about how you could tell you wanted to transition as soon as you got in the helicopter.
Right, we're going to move on. Let's get a question from John. Hi, John.
Good evening.
Hello.
An issue which has been troubling me for many years. Should businesses be more vegan-friendly?
I mean, are you a vegan?
No way am I a vegan.
Oh, right. You're quite a robust carnivore, aren't you?
Yes, a robust carnivore.
Yeah, that's the way to describe it. Well, this is because of... Well, it's PETA again, isn't it? I can't remember what that
hate
stands
that guy.
for. PETA, yeah. They're basically there's something for the ethical treatment of animals. You know, that American group. And they're talking about paint companies like Farrow and Ball, and they need to change the paint colour names to make them more vegan friendly, because a lot of them apparently normalise the exploitation of animals. Right? What do they mean by that?
Well, one of them is called dead salmon. So, but I don't believe they have a point at all whatsoever. But one thing I will say, given 6 weeks of labour and what it looks like we're going to get for 5 years, I'd let them rename every paint colour if they promised in return to do anything about knife crime, because I couldn't care less about the names of paint. We are doing absolute... I mean, that is just a massive distraction. Who cares? Imagine PETA in this environment now thinking all that they can do is discuss the names of paint.
Yeah, but they are monomaniacs. I mean, they're obsessed with this. So they will, I remember PETA putting out this thing about don't use gendered pronouns for pigeons because they might not identify as male or female. I'm not joking. They put out a picture of a pigeon with they, them next to the pigeon.
I don't think they fully understand the concept of paint. They haven't, actually squeezed a salmon to get that colour into the pot. It just looks a bit like salmon, although dead salmon, that's an awful name.
It's a terrible name.
Oh, what should we paint the kid's bedroom? Oh, dead salmon. There's some dead salmon on the wall.
Yeah, but they have very pretentious... Don't they have, elephant's breath?
Yeah.
One of the colour. What colour is it?
I think the kids' room would be in winning sperm.
PETA,
which is an off-white, I think,
PETA
Andrew.
need to go after... They need to go after Lily Allen, because I heard this week that Lily Allen took her dog back to the pound. It ate her Palestinian flag.
Is this a joke?
No, that's true.
Some of it is. I mean, it ate her passport, didn't it? And she
no, it ate her passport. Didn't eat the Palestinian flag.
No, well, she's got spares. I should have...
Right, OK. Poor dog. OK, so next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be speaking to Tamandra Harkness. She's going to be joining me live in the studio to discuss the role of social media in the riots that we've recently seen on our streets. So please, don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I want to see a flagpole, and I want to see the Union Jack when it's necessary. I must say I don't want to see some other flags, maybe, but that's my opinion. I'm one of the... I mean, I'm classed as a dinosaur. I'm an oldie, so I go for what I want to know.
Well, you're not a dinosaur in our books. What would you say to the people who were complaining about the Union flag and saying that it's a sign of national? What's your response to them?
Well, in this village, best thing is for them to get out of it. I'm being quite blunt. That's how I feel. I've lived in this village 60-odd years, 62 years, nearly 63 years. We've never had this problem. In our early days, we all helped each other. No one went against anybody. We agreed things. We used to have meetings up the village hall, as it was then. And it was all OK, but all of a sudden we've got newcomers coming in, and I'm not against it because we've got quite a few, and a lot of them are damn nice people, but we've just got one or two who are a bit anti. And, they don't do nothing much for the village, but they soon put the spoke in when we want to do something like that. That's my feeling.
But you think we should be proud of our national symbols, proud of our national flag?
Definitely, yeah. I was in the army. I only did national service, and when I finished national service, I was ill for a while actually. But anyhow, and then I went and joined the prison service, and that's how I've worked in things which the flag is important to us. We should always be proud of it. Not like these people that say we shouldn't have it because it might upset somebody because it's not their flag. Well, so what? It's our flag, so we should be proud of it. Sod the rest of them. Excuse my... but that's me.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Following the riots earlier this month, the role of social media has come under a lot of scrutiny. Last week, the National Police Chiefs Council said that 1,127 arrests had been made since the disorder began and 648 charges laid. And of those, 29 people were charged with offences involving social media or other online activity. Sentences for crimes such as publishing written material to stir up racial hatred have ranged from a 3-month custodial sentence to 20 months in prison. So with me now to discuss this is the writer and broadcaster Timandra Harkness. Timandra, thanks so much for joining me on the show. I want to ask you about this because, of course, you've written a book called Technology is what's the title again? Sorry, Timandra, what is it?
Technology is not the problem. Oh, look, there it is, live on screen.
So if technology is not the problem, why is it that lots of people are being arrested for social media posts at the moment?
Well, that's the perfect question, because I do think it's crazy that people are getting prison sentences for posts on social media that are not that far off the prison sentences for actually throwing bricks at the police or trying to set fire to a building with people inside. And I think that shows a couple of very worrying things. One is that the people who are actually doing stuff on the street are not really deemed to be responsible for their actions. It's like if you were that easily influenced that you just see some social media posts and immediately rush out and set fire to buildings, then are you really a fully fledged adult? And I do think people should be held to account for their actions and should be responsible for actually doing stuff. But the other side of it is that it really lets off the hook any investigation into why these things happen. Because if they did happen in a number of towns and cities around the country, it clearly wasn't a one-off fluke. There's clearly something going on there about people's relationship with the authorities, especially, and relationships with other people in their communities. And that really needs to be taken seriously and looked into. You can't just write it off and say, oh, well, no, people saw things on social media. I mean, there have been riots before. There were riots in the 1980s, long before there was social media or even really the internet. And nobody then said, oh, well, it's the problem of, I don't know, what they blamed. Phone lines? They didn't blame the form of communication. They said,
I suppose you're talking about the idea of a scapegoat, and that it's kind of easy to say, well, there were these people saying these horrible things online. That explains the violent behaviour, which happens all the time. If you think about the James Bulger case, that was blamed on on the film Child's Play 3, a horror film, which had nothing to do with the crimes, the horrific crimes that were committed. So is it just the case that perhaps the media generally is uncomfortable with the idea that people can turn violent and they just need to find something else to explain it?
Well, I think it's a mixture of things. I think there is partly that we don't like to think that people would normally do that kind of thing. And so there is an urge to go, well, there must be some explanation. And obviously, if there's some easy explanation, that also happens to be the thing that people are blaming for other stuff already. Like we've been talking non-stop about social media being to blame for everything bad for the last, I don't know, 5 years at least. So if you can then tag the new thing onto that, then that's kind of convenient. I mean, I was really worried. There was actually an opinion poll of normal people after normal people. There was an opinion poll of UK citizens after the riots, and they said, who or what do you blame for these riots? And to be fair, the biggest answer was the people actually doing it. They were most responsible. But a lot of people said, I think about half the people they asked said, oh, yeah, social media are partly responsible. And that does suggest that it's got kind of bedded into our minds as this is the cause of lots of bad stuff in the world.
But Timandra, you've looked into this and you've studied the impact of technology and all the rest of it. Is there any solid evidence for the idea that the public will react on cue to messages that they get from a Russian bot on Facebook?
No, actually, there's very little evidence for that. And a lot of people have looked into that, and including people who started off going, oh, this is obviously the explanation. And then they did some research and found that it has very little influence. I mean, what it tends to do is, like other forms of communication, it tends to reinforce what you already think and what you want to think. So, and I'm as guilty as anybody. If I go online and somebody posts something that backs up the thing that I already believe, I'm so inclined to just share it and go, see, this proves what I already thought. And I have to really stop myself and say, hang on, just check this. Just, is this true?
Yeah.
Or is this one of those things that emerges on the internet? But the good news is that we're not actually that quickly influenced by these things. What it tends to do is reinforce what we already think. But I'm very worried about the massive focus on it, because I think there's already a move to censor and restrict what we can say on the internet and on social media. I mean, the Online Safety Act that came into force earlier this year, but has not actually been fully enacted yet, because they're still working out the codes of practice. And that puts a duty on social media companies to control the content that, you know, ordinary people, that we post. And it's a duty that kind of goes beyond posts that are illegal, because obviously if I actually posted, I don't know, a picture of somebody's house and their address and said this person is a child murderer, go round and set fire to their house, that would be direct incitement to violence, right? So that's already a crime, whether you do it in person or online or whatever. But what's being called for now, and even the stuff that's already in the Online Safety Act, goes far beyond that. They have this concept of legal but harmful material, which they ended up taking out of the Act because they realised this is just an impossible concept to police. But they're talking about putting it back into the Act, or, you know, putting it into a new Act.
Well,
so that social media companies have a duty to remove legal but harmful content.
Well,
and
Tamandra,
on penalty of large fines. And if you're a social media company, you've got no incentive really to stand up and say, no, I'm afraid. We believe in free speech, and so we're going to defend people's right to say anything that's lawful. They're obviously, the incentive to them is to err on the side of caution and take things down and hide content that is perfectly reasonable opinions that, you know, there might be opinions that we don't like. I mean, the world is full of people with opinions I don't like. But it worries me, the idea that governments want social media companies to remove some of those opinions from the public view because they are legal but harmful.
Well, Tamandra, on that note, that rather chilling note, we're going to have to close it up. But thanks ever so much for joining me today.
Thanks, a pleasure. Via technology.
And the book is called Technology is Not the Problem, so do check that out. So next on Free Speech Nation, in a landmark legal case in Australia, a women-only app, Giggle, has been found to have discriminated against a trans-identifying male. And the CEO of that app, Sal Grover, will be joining me very shortly. Stay tuned.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's an improvement in our weather as we head into Monday, a bank holiday for some of us. There'll still be some showers around, but more in the way of sunny spells, and it'll just feel a little warmer. Low pressure moving off the scene, a brief ridge of high pressure moving in ahead of the next weather system, which does come in late Monday and into Tuesday, but an improvement anyway. Through the rest of the day, overnight into Monday morning, there's still quite a lot of cloud across the UK. This band of cloud across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland into northern England will continue to give some showery rain. Elsewhere, mixture of clear spells and showers, and temperatures milder than they have been of late, generally staying in the mid-teens. So mixed start to Monday morning. Bright skies across much of Scotland with scattering of showers, particularly across the north and the west, driest towards Aberdeenshire. On the fresh side, temperatures around 9 to 11 Celsius. Just Northern Ireland seeing a mixture of sunny spells and showers, but this cloudier zone across northern England into Wales giving some showery outbreaks of rain in places. Brighter for the rest of England, but some showers across southeast England initially clearing away, along with a brisk breeze here, but then generally through Monday, winds falling light. We'll see a scattering of showers through the day, largely across the northern part of England into Northern Ireland, North Wales, southern Scotland, elsewhere. Dry, but some sunny spells, and with lighter winds it will feel warmer. Temperatures lifting to the high teens to low 20s, up to around 23 across southeast England. On Tuesday, wet and windy weather spreading in across the north and the west of the UK. Some of this rain will be heavy at times, but further south and east, we'll start to import some warm air. Winds coming in from the south, plenty of sunny spells, and temperatures lifting towards the mid-20s, perhaps even higher by Wednesday, approaching 28, 29 Celsius before turning cooler again on Thursday.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Leo and Paul. We're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So just email us, or message us rather, at gbnews.com/your say. Now, in a landmark case in Australia, Sal Grover's women-only app Giggle has been found to have discriminated against a trans-identifying male after he was barred from using the service. The judge ruled that Roxanne Tickle had suffered indirect discrimination, and Sal Grover was ordered to pay $10,000 and costs. I'm delighted to say I'm joined now by the CEO of Giggle, Sal Grover. Welcome back to the show, Sal, and I'm sorry about your loss here. Can you explain to us whether you were expecting this, or did this come as a great surprise?
Hi, Andrew. And I always just anticipated the absolute worst because, I mean, we just live in such bizarre times, I think, that you kind of have to. However, because I've just always known that the case would go to the High Court, like because either I would appeal it or the other side would appeal it, I'm sort of not that shocked in that sense of I always knew that this was just part of what was going to be a long journey.
Yes, now the judge actually said during the trial that sex was changeable and not necessarily binary. And this has caused some confusion because obviously sex is not changeable as a matter of incontestable fact. However, the defence of the judge is that, well, this is simply the law as it stands since the amendments that were made to the Sex Discrimination Act in 2013 by the then government. Is that right? Should we be blaming the judiciary or should we be blaming the former government of Australia?
The former government of Australia. The legislation is muddled. I wouldn't actually say that it is clear that sex is changeable or that it was sort of a slam dunk for the other side at all. You can definitely interpret the Australian law that women's rights matter. It's just that hasn't happened. I mean, I think the intention of the Sex Discrimination Act was based on biological sex when it was written in 1984, because back then we weren't in this bizarre zeitgeist of men claiming to be women. But I think it's also worth noting that, having something ruled that sex is changeable. Now, obviously, that sex is not changeable. No, not human being has ever changed sex. But the charge was gender identity discrimination. So I think another layer of this that highlights just sort of how confusing and that gender ideology is in general is that when you have a claim of gender identity discrimination, suddenly the answer to that is sex is changeable. And it's like, well, which is it, sex or gender identity? Because if anybody actually genuinely thinks that a man has turned into a woman, well, that would be sex discrimination, not gender identity discrimination.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So this was a character called Roxanne Tickle. I think we've got an image just so that people can understand. And now, I wouldn't suggest that, this is obviously a male who identifies as female. And of course, we're all free to identify however we want. But I suppose we're not free, are we, to decide that we can go into women's spaces if we are men simply because we identify as women. Now, what I just want to know about this is, does this mean now that in Australian law, women are not allowed to gather by themselves, even if it's, say, a lesbian dating group?
Correct. Yeah. Women cannot gather without the presence of men in Australia. We cannot, I mean, if a male person was to walk into a bathroom or change room, all he has to do is say, I'm a woman, and we literally have no right to say anything else to him. It's just off you go then. So I mean, obviously that's absolutely devastating. But at the same time, women like myself and in Australia, like Kath Deves, Louise Elliott, Kira Smith, Angie Jones, everybody has been screaming about this for, years. Sorry. And sorry, it's my daughter. We've been screaming about this. So this has actually just confirmed what we've been saying, what we know to be happening. So, in that sense, to have it confirmed that we're not conspiracy theorists, we're not crying wolf. This is actually happening. I think that is actually quite significant. And it's not a loss in that sense, that we can now actually go, everybody, what we're saying is really, really serious. And if everybody had listened to us in the years leading up to this, maybe we wouldn't be in such a disastrous position.
Can you just give a bit of background of how this actually happened? How did Roxanne Tickle get onto the app, and how did you discover that there was a male on the app?
So men would attack the app daily. So a male getting on the app wasn't actually a unique experience at all. So we had AI to try and have a gatekeeping that would aid us in ensuring that the app was female only. Now, it's technology. We had it set to 94% accuracy. Of course, technology is not perfect. Some men passed through it. Doesn't mean that they're women. It's just technology is flawed. And so at some point, I just would have, when I was just checking, I would have seen a male and removed him. I don't remember doing it because, as I said, it just wasn't an event. And I just removed him on the basis of being male, which is correct. He never spoke with anyone. He didn't connect with anyone. He wasn't active on the app. He literally was on the app. I lurked for a little bit and then was removed. So it's not like when I removed him, I've removed him from sort of a network of women he was interacting with. The Sex Discrimination Commissioner, actually, who had intervened in the case as amicus curiae to interpret the law. And that's sort of why we're in this situation. And the Sex Discrimination Commissioner in Australia is on the side of gender identity, which makes it all even crazier. But she'd said sort of after the ruling that that the applicant just wanted to go on the app to talk about recipes and just it was very sort of sexist stereotypes what she used for what a woman is. And I was like, but he could have done that, and he literally never did.
Right.
He lurked and then he was removed. So I actually don't accept any of that. And this person has, I've obviously been, I have to pay $10,000 in part because I laughed at a meme in court, and then I've sort of been accused of, sort of harassment or damages or whatever it is. This person has stalked me online behind a block on Twitter for years. Yesterday, he mocked a media appearance that I did. I don't know this person. I wish him well. As you said, I think that anybody can identify however they want. It's just the moment that my rights are going to be removed because of this apparent right to identify, that's when I've got a problem with it. And I just think women and girls should have female-only spaces. That's all it comes down to. So I don't think I'm the controversial one here.
And finally, doesn't this sort of imply that this notion of gender identity, the idea that we have a kind of gendered essence, which very, very few people actually believe, it's a very kind of niche belief system. Why is it, do you think, that very small belief system is now being imposed on everyone by the judiciary and by every major institution? I mean, that would be like imposing the belief in transubstantiation on everyone.
Completely. I think that it's being imposed like this because gender ideology doesn't work unless it's imposed, because it's such a ridiculous claim that men can be women. And, most people aren't going to actually believe that by choice, because most people aren't sort of falling into this cult of gender ideology. So the only way to make it work is to enforce it, because if you have people that are allowed to say or believe or that it's not true or associate separately from these people, then the whole thing crumbles. So it only works and continues to have life if it's imposed, which is the problem.
Well, Sal Grover, I hope you'll come back and give us some more updates as this develops. Thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
And next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to talk to Alga Sehgal-Cuthbert from Don't Divide Us. She's going to talk to me about her new paper on the riot and violent disorder. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
A new exhibition at Gainsborough's house in Sudbury in Suffolk is the first to chart the artistic careers of Cedric Morris, who lived from 1889 to 1982, and Arthur Let Haynes, who lived from 1894 to 1978. They were partners in love and art for 60 years. I'm joined now by the exhibition curator, Dr. Pat Hardy. Some people will not be in the least bit familiar with these two British artists. So do you want to say a word of background about Cedric Morris and Arthur Let Haynes?
About 100 artworks were left in 2017 of Cedric Morris's works. And it was felt then that an exhibition to showcase that work would be very appealing to the public. Morris's flower paintings have had a lot of traction. They've become very popular commercially, and there's been more research done on them. So it was felt that it would be good to broaden out the flower painter aspects of Morris's work to showcase the portraits and the landscapes and protest paintings, which we now had in the collection. And it was also thought important that his partner, as you mentioned, for 60 years, Let Haynes, was also given some profile because he very much fell away into the shadows because he was promoting Morris's work and running the school, which was set up nearby, near Sudbury, near Gainsborough's house at Hadley, which was a very different type of art school. And a lot of people, both artists and locals, do remember it having been in operation and how wild it was and how bohemian they were. So it's felt to be a good story in personal terms, but also artistically to try and place these two, particularly Morris, in the 20th century art world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. A forthcoming report from the group Don't Divide Us has looked extensively at the role public policy plays in relation to violent social disorder. And the author of that report and also the director of Don't Divide Us is here right now. It's Alga Sehgal-Cuthbert. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Andy.
So, Alga, you run Don't Divide Us. Do you want to just quickly tell us what Don't Divide Us does?
Yep, we're a campaign that aims to make sure that a common-sense approach to questions about race is kept in the public sphere and not kind of delegitimised by more radical, critical race-type theories. And we think it's very, apart from not dividing us by race, we also think it's very, very wrong, particularly for schools and libraries, to divide us off from our past and our cultural heritage. Not because we're all kind of gammons, you're jingoistic waving, you know, but because those are cultural resources that belong to us all and are very important for us. So that's.
And you've written this paper, which is going to be published on the Don't Divide Us website,
That's
and you
right.
are looking specifically at the riots. And of course, we have seen though examples of racist behaviour, people attacking mosques, people saying racist things. You're someone who has experienced racism yourself. This can't be something that we can support, is it?
No. Of course, I mean, That is not what we're questioning or looking at. The point is you'd have to be very, very kind of facile to think that the explanation for that is just the far right or just social media. Those are very, very kind of superficial explanations. There's obviously something much deeper going on. And I was very frustrated at the whole debate during that week when the riots were happening, because it just seemed, we were just ending up with this, it's these far-right thugs, or it's a white working class ethnicity, or it's the Muslim and the Islam, and I just thought, there's got to be more to this than that. And then I thought of things that I've studied before and went back to it and worked on this paper that will be out tomorrow. And you can see that what has happened, what we see happening increasingly, these kind of very arbitrary outbreaks of episodic violence, they sit on a much longer thing that's been happening, which is actually, I think, more to do, this is what I argue, it's to do with the disenfranchisement of huge swathes of British people. And that's been going on for years. It's been political. The riots happened 1 month after an election where the majority of people who could vote did not vote.
Right. So there is and you also mentioned, don't you, that multiculturalism plays a part in this.
Absolutely.
How do you define that, and what? Because there's a lot of disagreement about what it even means.
Yeah. OK, so multiculturalism is not just having different ethnicities living in a country. That's been happening in Britain for decades and decades, from the early 20th century, primarily, probably a bit more before, and then largely after the Second World War. That is not what we're talking about. Multiculturalism is an official ideology. It's an on-top ideology. And it's really a way of managing social relationships. And it came at a time, the actual first multicultural intervention in schools in Britain was in 1985. And it was actually under the Conservative Party, which I think people will be surprised to hear. It was obviously then picked up and taken and driven, like with bells on, by New Labour, and it's continued ever since. And what it does, it's basically a renunciation of the social contract that has existed prior to that, where the compromise was that the interests of business, people through the unions and the politicians, that kind of corporate tripartite way of organising society through the welfare state, was a way of actually bringing people together. The welfare state was not just about doling a bit of treatment here or there. It actually brought people together and organised the way that they could work with relative freedom and autonomy. That's why my parents came over. Its reach was that wide.
So there was a shared kind of British
Exactly.
identity.
There was a shared. People could buy into it. It's not like they didn't feel Indian anymore or Caribbean, but they could feel that and feel genuinely that they were part of Britain.
So does that mean that multiculturalism, as the ideology you're describing, effectively reinforces difference?
Yes, it says, instead of... it's sectionalising us. It's envisaging us and inviting us to see ourselves as communities.
Yes.
As different... when did you ever hear anybody, apart from possibly King Charles, address the nation or the general public? It's like, we've got to make sure we're going to reach all communities, the hard-to-reach communities, the LGBTQXYZ communities, the black community, and it's like, no, I just want to say, no, the community is just what people do of their own volition on your street. Like if you have a little local neighbourhood community, you keep the state out of it, and then all public things need to address us as the public.
Concurrently with this idea, there's also been the rise of identity politics.
Exactly.
And you've written about this as well. So do you want to explain why that can have a damaging effect?
Well, identity politics is multiculturalism, if you like, was the embryonic version, and then when you have identity politics, you've already got the social fabric carved up into different groups, and then identity politics is making that even more fractious through valorising materially and through cultural status and through moral, goody rewards and baddie rewards if you say the wrong thing. It's then attributing values to different, on that hierarchy of communities. And that is really, really dangerous, because what we've lost, as we have allowed that to happen, is any sense of a common humanity. If we don't have a sense of a common humanity, then really we're back to Hobbesian fight. You know, whoever has the biggest stick, whoever has the loudest voice is going to rule. So it's
how do we change that? Because what you're talking about really is resurrecting a view that had been established but has since been dismantled, which is this common shared identity. There's more that connects us than divides us. This kind of idea that skin colour, all the rest of it, shouldn't matter in our relations. But we do live in a hyper-racialised society, thanks to the rise of identity politics. Is it going to be easy to, I don't know, get back that old progressive value?
Well, it's not going to be easy, but there are some things in our favour. I do believe that this is an elite thing. It's not something that the majority of people believe in. But I think what's happened is that the common sense of ordinary people has been really marginalised. It's been, you know, we're made to think that just common sense isn't enough. You need an expert for this, you need an expert for that, you need an expert to feed your kid, to read to your kid, you need an expert to do things that previous generations for hundreds of years have done without experts and done quite well. So we need to just be more confident. There are groups all around who are beginning to push back. It is, I think, a more serious and profound political moment than I think is often realised, but that's an opportunity too. So ultimately it's up to us, I think, to think deeper, question more, be more courageous in our workplaces. You know, if it doesn't make sense to you, all you have to say is, I'm sorry, I don't agree. Or, you know, can you explain why?
Yes, but people are very scared of that, aren't they? Because they don't want to be branded as racist.
Well, that's true. That's why Don't Divide Us is that you're not racist, right? Yes. You know, if you need support or need, you know, want to run over an argument, or you want to, it's just like reassurance that you're not racist because you've just got a legitimate question about some affirmative action in your place, then contact us. We can talk you through it and help you a bit and stand up and you know, you have common sense on your side.
And you've got all sorts of resources and things on the Don't Divide Us website, is that right?
We have the website, we've got resources for teachers, we've got, you know, sort of sections on the vocabulary that people use. We're a small organisation, so we'd love to do a lot more. Support our work if you can, visit our website. But you know, we're not going away.
Fantastic. Yeah. And it's don'tdivideus.com?
That's right.
I took a guess and I got it right. Thank you very much, Alka Segal-Cuthbert. That's the end of the first hour on Free Speech Nation, but don't go away. There's lots more to come between now and 9 o'clock.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's an improvement in our weather as we head into Monday, a bank holiday for some of us. There'll still be some showers around, but more in the way of sunny spells, and it will just feel a little warmer. Low pressure moving off the scene, a brief ridge of high pressure moving in ahead of the next weather system, which does come in late Monday and into Tuesday, but an improvement anyway. Through the rest of the day, overnight into Monday morning, there's still quite a lot of cloud across the UK. This band of cloud across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland into northern England will continue to give some showery rain. Elsewhere, mixture of clear spells and showers, and temperatures milder than they have been of late, generally staying in the mid-teens. So mixed start to Monday morning. Bright skies across much of Scotland with scattering of showers, particularly across the north and the west, driest towards Aberdeenshire. On the fresh side, temperatures around 9 to 11 Celsius. Just Northern Ireland seeing a mixture of sunny spells and showers, but this cloudier zone across northern England into Wales giving some showery outbreaks of rain in places. Brighter for the rest of England, but some showers across southeast England initially clearing away, along with a brisk breeze here, but then generally through Monday, winds falling light. We'll see a scattering of showers through the day, largely across the northern part of England into Northern Ireland, North Wales, southern Scotland, elsewhere. Dry, but some sunny spells, and with lighter winds it will feel warmer. Temperatures lifting to the high teens to low 20s, up to around 23 across southeast England. On Tuesday, wet and windy weather spreading in across the north and the west of the UK. Some of this rain will be heavy at times, but further south and east, we'll start to import some warm air. Winds coming in from the south, plenty of sunny spells and temperatures lifting towards the mid-20s, perhaps even higher by Wednesday, approaching 28, 29 Celsius before turning cooler again on Thursday.
warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. And you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'll buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry also revealed that he wouldn't bring his wife Meghan Markle back to the UK over safety concerns.
Let's talk to royal correspondent Michael Cole.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ellie. I mean, they live in California. I'm not sure what the murder rate is there, but that's a more dangerous place than Britain's at any time of the day. And of course, he compromised his own safety when he said in his book, Spare, his autobiography, which was Ghost Britain, that he'd personally killed 25 Taliban when he was serving with the British Army in Afghanistan. Well, that painted a target for life on the back of himself and his family, which was a very unwise thing for him to do. The other thing which struck me, it was that he invoked the name of the late Queen, saying that he'd had several conversations with his grandmother, and she'd been very, very supportive in his battle. He sees himself, and it's the word he's used, as a dragon slayer against the popular press, the tabloid press, and he's continuing with that. Of course, his brother, Prince William, has settled, but also in the programme was Hugh Grant. Now, Hugh Grant also has settled, as indeed did I, when I received an apology from News Group. I believe in a free and unfettered press. Newspapers are having a bad time at the moment, losing circulation, losing advertising. Young people don't read newspapers. And so I felt that the right thing to do was to settle. I didn't want to take punitive action against newspapers.
GB News, the People's Channel.
And there's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but let's get a news update first from Sam Francis.
Andrew, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 8 o'clock, the top story tonight. The man accused of killing 3 people at a cultural festival in Western Germany has been accused of being a member of a terrorist organisation. The 26-year-old Syrian, identified by prosecutors there, is named Isa al-H. He's also been charged with 3 counts of murder, attempted murder and dangerous bodily harm. Islamic State says it was behind Friday's knife attack, which also left 8 people injured. Well, a church service has been taking place today to remember and pay respects to those who lost their lives in that attack. The victims include a 56-year-old woman and 2 men, aged 56 and 67. 4 of those wounded are still in a life-threatening condition. Flights between the UK and Israel have been cancelled today after tensions in the Middle East escalated overnight. Israel says it carried out strikes in southern Lebanon in self-defence, while Hezbollah fired rockets and drones in the other direction following the assassination of a senior commander. Both sides are reported to have said that neither wants to see a full-scale war in the region. An urgent search is continuing tonight for a missing British journalist who is believed to be trapped under the rubble of a bombed hotel in Ukraine. He was part of a 6-strong team from the Reuters news agency caught in a Russian missile strike in Kramatorsk. A Ukrainian and a US national were also injured in that strike. The billionaire founder of encrypted messaging app Telegram has been arrested in France today, according to reports. Pavel Durov was detained after his private jet landed at an airport in North Paris. According to officials, the 39-year-old was arrested under a warrant for offences related to that messaging app. In Russia, the embassy in France, is taking immediate steps, they say, to clarify the situation. Police say they have made 38 arrests and recovered 4 knives on day 1 of Notting Hill Carnival in West London. More than 7,000 police officers are on duty, with around 1 million people expected to attend Europe's biggest street festival. We're also hearing that a man believed to be in his 20s has been stabbed, though his injuries aren't life-threatening. And finally, His Majesty the King has appointed a composer of the London 2012 Paralympic Games as Master of the King's Music. Erilyn Warren was also commissioned to compose pieces marking the Golden and the Diamond Jubilees for the late Queen Elizabeth II. The Belize-born 66-year-old was the first woman to receive an Ivor Novello Award for classical music and the first black woman to have a work featured in the Proms. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'll be back with you at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. We have a wonderful studio audience here, so let's get some questions. Our first question comes from Abdi. How you doing?
Hello, good evening. Are we finally going to recognize the sovereignty of Chinese Communist Party over British universities?
Yeah, I think that sounds like an odd question. I'm going to have to give some context, Abdi, for that one, because what we all know about Labour, the Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, coming in and scuppering the Higher Education Free Speech Act, which had been set up, was all ready to go, and she did it the day before Parliament went into recess, so there couldn't be a debate about a free speech bill. But anyway, it turns out, it's just been reported that one of the reasons why British universities didn't want to have this Free Speech Act is because they wanted to protect their operations in authoritarian states such as China. So if a major university has a campus in China, they can't be pro-free speech because the CCP will have an issue.
Yeah, and of course, China often takes quite a tough stance on student free speech, such as in Tiananmen Square. And I'm sorry for anybody watching this in China, because I've said those words, you're now going to get a knock at the door.
Not quite.
But yeah, this is ridiculous. We're sort of bending the rules in this country to kowtow to the rules in other countries, and they're not rules that we should be following. If anything, we should be propagating British values of fairness and tolerance and equality and free speech around the world, and instead we're sort of bending Britain to fit other regimes.
Although it's interesting that, because there was a report the other day about how the British taxpayer is funding Chinese feminist opera. Yeah. So they are trying to spread certain views in China, aren't they? Just not the free speech stuff.
Yeah, and that was foreign aid as well. Yeah. So, you know, people in this country, poor people in this country, are being taxed to pay for opera in China.
Nothing wrong with opera. Paul, what do you make of this? Because I'm not so sure it's just about the communist countries. I just think the Labour Party just don't really like free speech.
Well, they don't like free speech, you're absolutely right. And it's convenient for them to stand behind this particular argument, because who's going to argue with China?
Well, that's true.
China. But, of course, you know, we've put ourselves in a situation now where there are more university spaces than there are students available to fill them.
Yeah.
So anyone who's got, like, anywhere near a D or an F is going straight to Oxford at the moment. But one thing we need to be able to do is preserve our own cultures and customs. And one of the universities have always said this, wherever they are, particularly in the Western world, should be the bastions of free speech. Because you should be able to debate anything at that point. These are places of learning.
Yeah, but it's so weird, isn't it? Because the Labour are sort of suggesting there isn't really a problem with free speech.
Of course.
But I've interviewed people on this show, people like Jo Phoenix, who was harassed to the extent that she got PTSD because she has gender-critical views. That's not free speech. That's not academic freedom. How can they continue to deny that there's a problem when there are so many examples?
Yeah, and in some ways, we're worse than China because, you know, at least in China, when the government imposes these draconian restrictions on free speech and enforces what people are allowed to say and share on social media, they're doing it to sort of make the country stronger and, you know, preserve Chinese culture and tradition and all the things and make people feel proud in their country. Whereas in this country, any of that is actually the thing that they're making illegal. If you say you're proud to be British or anything, you've immediately got a target on your back.
Yeah, you're a bigot, Leo.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's move on to a question from Bob. Hello, Bob.
Hi, good evening. Has the Home Office undermined the presumption of innocence?
OK, well, that's interesting. So Yvette Cooper has been accused of suggesting that everyone arrested in connection with the riots is guilty. Did you read about this?
I did indeed.
Yeah.
And that's an abhorrent comment. I mean, by itself, they should be investigating themselves.
Well, she said,
on that comment alone.
She said everyone was criminals. All the 1,000-odd people who had been detained were criminal, but they haven't been through a trial.
No, you're a criminal once you've been, convicted of a crime.
Yeah.
You're presumed innocent until that point. And for the Home Secretary to undermine that whole premise, which underpins the legal system in the West, the presumption of innocence, is abhorrent. I can't find any other word for it.
Yeah, and there is a tendency I've seen with all these debates to lump everyone in.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember there was that image of the guy with the swastika? I think it's fair to say that's a neo-Nazi. I think, you know, he's outed himself right there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean...
Or he might be a pro-Palestine protester. It's
right, exactly. Yeah, it's hard to tell. But, you know, that doesn't mean that you can say that everyone at that march has the same values as him or all the rest of it. I think you could say if people are breaking the law and smashing stuff up, they should be arrested, no problem. But there will be people who are protesting peacefully as well.
Well, yeah, they're locking people up for sort of being in the vicinity or shouting. There was a guy who shouted at a police dog. You know, another guy waved a flag. You know, he was near a mosque, you know, so it was intimidating. But a lot of it seems to fall far short of violence or incitement to violence, which, you know, I think we can all agree is reprehensible. And I'm not sure due process is being followed because they've got these 24-hour courts. So people don't have time to seek legal counsel, and they're being told that, you know, even if you plead not guilty, you're going to be jailed anyway. You're going to be held on remand. So, which seems like prejudicing, you know, their innocence already. So, I think we're going to see a lot of appeals in the future, and a lot of these ridiculously long sentences could get rolled back.
And they're being overt about it. The judges are saying, "I'm giving you a long sentence to set an example." They're saying that very clearly.
And a judge in Belfast even said, if you're at the riot, at a riot or a protest, even if you're just observing, you're still going to be held on remand. So we're going to treat you, you know, as if you're guilty. You're going to be given jail time if you're just observing. So in Britain, never mind the right to protest, we don't even have the right to look at a protest.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
On TV. Imagine everyone in this room has watched the riots.
Yeah.
3 years each.
Yep, OK. Well, it could happen. Let's move on to a question from Josh. This is coming on email. Let's have a look. Where's the question? I can't see the question on the autocue. So we'll not bother with Josh. And we'll move on. Is there another question from John? John, hi, John.
Hi, Andrew. Are nukes gay enough?
Sorry, John, that really made me laugh.
Sincerity of the question.
What a question. Right, but this is because of the... this is someone in the Biden administration. This is from the Department of Energy. This official has praised queer theory and said that queer theory is important to America's national security. This is someone called Sneha Nair. Said, queer theory informs... I've got the quotation here. Queer theory informs the struggle for nuclear justice and disarmament. Queer theory helps to shift the perception of nuclear weapons of instruments for security by telling the hidden stories of displacement, illness and trauma caused by their production and testing. They're bombs. Yeah. They're not gay.
But look at the shape of them.
Oh, Leo, you had to go there, didn't you?
The one that was dropped on Nagasaki was even called Big Boy.
Yeah.
This is.
I don't think it's as sexual as you think. But this is insane, right? This is coming from the Biden administration. This isn't like some crazy activist with a Twitter account. Yeah, this is the Biden. This is the government.
This is like what they're saying about Welsh buildings all being racist, but they're doing it with bombs and queerness. And by the way, queerness doesn't mean anything. Like gay means something. It means, you have same-sex relationships. But queer just means you identify as queer. So it's a way of, getting some of the victim points and the virtue points of having a unusual sexual identity. Yeah. But without actually, doing any of the hard work or.
Well, no, it's not hard work, Leo, believe me. But statistically, most people who identify as queer are in fact just straight. Yeah. They've just got a kink. It's like when Dannii Minogue came out as queer, and then she did an interview saying, "Oh, I wouldn't ever do anything sexual with a woman." Well, you're not queer then, Dannii. Go back to singing your trashy, cheap songs that are nowhere as good as your sisters. Right? What do you think, Paul?
Absolutely trash, Dannii Minogue. Superb. Well, of course, this is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mad.
The idea of queering the most devastating bombs available to humanity. Yeah. It's about as useful as me going to the Notting Hill Carnival and trying to promote GB News. It wouldn't make any difference whatsoever.
You know what I like about this? It's like when they did the Pride Parade in Arlington, Texas this year, was co-sponsored by Lockheed Martin, who make really inclusive, deadly bombs. OK. Well, look, next on Free Speech Nation, who or what is to blame for all these recent riots? We're going to be discussing that, so please don't go anywhere.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Soya, almond, oat, hazelnut, coconut milk.
Yeah.
It's now much more difficult to choose.
Yeah, there's an awful lot out there on the market. So how do you feel about horse milk? Yes, you heard that right. For generations, people in Central Asia have sworn by horse milk and the supposed health benefits. And now researchers in Poland believe it should even be used in ice cream. For the sweet treat not only tastes delicious, apparently, but could also be good for your gut.
OK, well, joining us now to give us the lowdown on why we should be considering switching over to horse milk is farmer Frank Shellard from Cromwell Farm, Britain's only horse dairy. Good morning, Frank. Look, you're an expert on all things milk. You've even written a book on it. Is horse milk good for you? How does it compare nutritionally, first of all, to cow's milk?
I think the big difference is, just to make the point from the very start, cows, sheep and goats and all those other alternative milks have got 4 stomachs. Horse has got a single stomach, so a lot of the enzymes and a lot of the makeup of the milk is very similar to mother's milk. So our bodies are a lot more able, us being a single stomach animal, if you like, to digest that milk. So that's the big thing. That's the first point I'd like to make. Because of the makeup of the mare's milk, you could drink the lactose and the lactase in it. You could probably, not all, don't quote with everybody, but a big percentage of those people that are lactose intolerant could drink the mare's milk. The great thing about the mare's milk is it's very, very good for your gut flora. If you remember in the history books, Cleopatra bathed in ass's milk, and ass's milk is exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same makeup as mare's milk, and she bathed in it for eternal youth and to keep the skin and her metabolism correct.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
back to Free Speech Nation. A new article written by the barrister Sam Fowles argues that the recent riots in the UK were a result of years of journalists and politicians spreading far-right tropes. He says that influential figures bear responsibility for the violence and that politicians have a vested interest in not referring to the riots as terrorism. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by the author of that article, barrister Sam Fowles, and Toby Young as well from the Free Speech Union. Thank you both ever so much for joining me. Sam, it's your article, so I want to come to you first and discuss this with you. Can you just firstly clarify what you mean by far right? Because the article mentions examples of really horrible far-right terrorist behaviour, ethno-nationalism, all these really repugnant things. But you also refer to people who have got concerns about immigration. Do you think that they're all far-right, or is there a very clear distinction in your mind?
I think if you are demonising or blaming people of different ethnicities to you for your problems based on misinformation, then yeah, that is probably far right for me.
OK, Sam, I want to give you an opportunity as well to just outline your key argument in the article that you wrote for the magazine.
Sure. Well, the basic point is that for about 30 years, politicians have systematically made a lot of people in the country poorer. We've become less socially mobile, and over the last austerity period, the richest people in the country doubled their wealth and increased their incomes by about 4.7%, while the poorest fifth lost income by about 1.6%. Now, obviously, politicians can't say, oh, we're really sorry we've made you poorer and essentially made your lives a whole lot more difficult. So they try to focus anger elsewhere, i.e. on people of different ethnicities, people of different colours, people of different religions. And they do that by adopting far-right conspiracy theories. And so good example of that is Suella Braverman claiming that the majority of grooming gangs are Muslim. Which is, in fact, according to her own department's data, absolutely untrue, and the majority of grooming gangs are white.
So just to be clear, Sam, are you arguing that statements like the one you just quoted from Suella Braverman, those kinds of statements from politicians, that they are directly responsible for the riots that ensued?
No, I'm arguing that they create the context for the riots. People have to take responsibility for their own actions. The immediate cause of the riots were people deciding to choose violence rather than Google and a conspiracy theory online and realise that it was completely untrue. OK, I want to bring Toby Young in now at that point. So Sam's got a point, hasn't he, is that the various politicians potentially have raised the temperature, but ultimately the rioters are responsible for their own actions. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm reluctant to blame senior politicians, heads of think tanks, journalists, dating back 15 years for the recent disturbances. I would have thought that the reason so many ordinary people, particularly in deprived areas, and I wouldn't quibble with Sam's criticism of previous governments for not doing more to level up. But I would have thought the reason they are angry about excessively high levels of mass immigration is not because they believe in conspiracy theories, not because they've been led down rabbit holes by irresponsible politicians, but because they can see in their own communities the impact that the rapid influx of people with very different cultures, people who come from far-flung parts of the world, they can see the impact they're having. They can see the impact they're having on wages in service jobs. They know that in some cases they are responsible for violent crimes, particularly violent crimes against women and girls. They're aware of various ways in which people who've recently arrived in their communities disdain them, don't have any respect for them or the British way of life. And I think, the public have been expressing their unhappiness about the current level of immigration for a long time. The current, I think Migration Watch found out that a majority of the British people, certainly not just people on the far right, want to reduce the overall level of inward migration.
Well, let me ask Sam about that specifically, Sam. I mean, can you envisage a situation where it's not a far right thing to have some legitimate concerns about immigration, whether that is to do with wage depression or whether it is to do with the perception that certain individuals aren't assimilating?
Well, if your concern is about wage depression, then it's not a legitimate concern because wage depression isn't caused by immigration. And in fact, Toby was again misleading there because he said, in fact, anti-immigration sentiment is highest in places with lowest or no immigration in there. Pro-immigration sentiment is highest in the places with the highest levels of immigration. And so to say that, people are seeing immigrants coming and stealing our jobs or raping our women or committing higher level of sexual assault, again, Toby was wrong to suggest that. They don't. There's no evidence for that. It's just simply wrong. It's based on misinformation.
I'm going to bring Toby in then. Do you want to respond to that, Toby?
Well, I don't think it is based on misinformation. I mean, you may quibble with what Suella Braverman's description of a majority of the perpetrators in the various grooming gang scandals as being Muslims or being of Pakistani origin, but certainly they represent a disproportionately large number of the people involved
that's a lie.
in grooming gangs. And I think, what about the various...
Wait, let Toby finish his point and then I'll come to you, Sam.
But Sam, are you suggesting that only, the percentage of people in grooming gangs who are of Muslim, Pakistani heritage is no higher than their percentage in the local populations where those grooming gangs have been active? That's surely absurd.
Sam, is that what you're suggesting?
The percentage of people convicted of child grooming of Asian origin is 6%. That is lower than the percentage of people of Asian origin in the population. So yes, that's what I'm saying.
But what about in the areas where the grooming gangs have been operating, Sam? It may be that nationally the figure you've just quoted is correct, but what about in places like Bradford, in places like Rotherham? Surely the number of Muslims in grooming gangs is far higher than their overall percentage of the population in those localities.
Well, given that no one actually collects that data and multiple freedom of information requests have been made to try and obtain it, I think it's completely irresponsible for you to be alleging that based on zero evidence. And in fact, when the national evidence points in the opposite direction. And that is the
Sam, we're having a discussion here about the evidence and about the arguments, and that seems to me a very healthy thing to do. But it seems,
it's saying things based on zero evidence.
Well, it seems okay, but it seems to me that discussion, you can say that you think that is based on zero evidence, and Toby can counter it, and we'll get somewhere. But maybe there's a point to be made that by suggesting that even having the discussion or saying some of the things that Toby is saying is in some way creating the conditions for violence, that might be a step too far. Isn't discussion the more healthy approach?
Discussion, when it's based on has some semblance of fact, when you're just making things up, and the things that you're making up have, as we've seen, contributed to discourse which actually endanger people, then no, I think, yeah, we have, of course, we have freedom.
Fine, well, let me give you another example, Sam, of that, just to see if this applies across the board. So in February, you wrote an article for the New European where you said something that was factually incorrect about a group of gender-critical women, including Jo Phoenix and Maya Forstater and Alison Bailey. And you said that these people have been publicly attacking trans people. That was factually wrong. The article had to be taken down. You were accused of libel as a result of that. And those women, by the way, have had death and rape threats from people who have read things in the press that have got them very angry, like your article. So do you accept that you are responsible for those death and rape threats? Would you like to say now on air that you're sorry for causing those death and rape threats?
No, because I didn't cause those death and rape threats.
Right, so there isn't necessarily causality between having a conversation and getting things wrong as you did to the crimes that occur.
You're alleging that I got things wrong.
You did factually get things wrong, yes. That's why you were accused of libel. That's why the publication took the article down, Sam.
Well, actually, Andrew, you're alleging a lot of things there.
Yes, I know. I'm not. You were accused of libel at the time. That's a fact.
I was accused of libel at the time, and no case was brought because the
So would you like to, again, publicly accuse those women of publicly attacking trans people, which they didn't do? By all means, feel free to make that statement if you still stand by it.
I think that publicly attacking uses the Cambridge Dictionary definition. And that definition is, and I can't quote it exactly, but I'll give you a précis, which is to use very strong language to criticise people. I think
they didn't, though. Joe Phoenix did not criticise trans people. Joe Phoenix was talking about women's rights and the importance to maintain women's spaces. It is factually wrong to say she's actually been very open and extremely explicit about her support for trans rights. So you are again saying something that's wrong. No, I'm not saying that you are responsible, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to say things that are factually wrong. But you can't then say that other commentators who say things that, in your view, are factually wrong lead to violence. It's an inconsistency. Can't you see that?
No, because, well, firstly, every time I try to, you challenged me to repeat something on air and then interrupted me before I'd set it out. Secondly, so I will look up what I say because I'll quote it exactly. If you want to come back to that point.
OK, well, I can do it for you. You said that Denise Farmy, Rachel Mead, Alison Bailey, Maya Forstater and Joe Phoenix had publicly attacked trans people, or that gender-critical feminists in particular publicly attacked trans people. I want to come to you, though, Toby.
That's not the quote. You've absolutely misquoted me.
The quote is publicly attacked trans people.
What I argued in that article was that a deficiency in the Equality Act allows statements which I consider to be attacking trans people, which is a statement of opinion.
Yes, absolutely. And you're free to that opinion. And you're free to misrepresent the law. That's fine. But my point to you is...
misrepresent the law.
Yes, you did. You said there was a loophole in the law to enable gender-critical feminists to attack trans people. That's not true.
No, I didn't. I said
that's not true.
There is a loophole in the law which allows that because the law applies in the workplace, but it does not apply in the same way outside of the workplace. So if you make statements which may not be allowed in the workplace, outside of the workplace, then you're treated by a different
That's absolutely
standard.
fine. People are free to go and check it themselves. Oh, no, they can't because the publication took it down for fear of libel. OK, Toby, but what do you think about this? I mean, I think I'm trying to demonstrate a point here that it should be OK to have robust conversations, to get things wrong, to express opinions that I consider quite extreme. I consider Sam's opinions on that subject quite an extremist position. But I don't think he's responsible for the violence or the threats that ensued. Am I wrong about that?
No, I don't think you're wrong about that, Andrew. I think I read Sam's article, and I think my biggest issue with Sam's article is that he completely dismisses the concerns that people in areas with high levels of inward migration. He completely dismisses their concerns as almost beneath contempt. They've been led astray. The information they've been fed is false. They believe in conspiracy theories, etc. I would have thought that surely the way to address, if you think those people are just completely mistaken, if you think they're wrong about the costs in their communities of mass migration, the way to address their concerns is not to try and demonize them, smear them as members of the far right or people easily gulled by conspiracy theorists. Surely you take their concerns seriously and you engage them in robust debate in the public square. That is the way to try and resolve your differences. I mean, there's a great quote that someone came up with when I was on a recent Free Speech Union tour of Australia, which is that if you won't let the people you disagree with speak their minds, how can you hope to change them?
Well, let me ask Sam that. I mean, what would you like to do? You and I obviously robustly disagree on an awful lot of things, and I think that's fine. I don't think it's a problem that you think I'm very wrong, and I don't think you should think it's a problem that I think you're very wrong. But Toby just made the point that the conversation seemed to be the best way forward. Are you suggesting, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I want you to answer the question. In your article, what do you think is the solution to this? If you're saying there are people who are perpetuating far-right tropes or misinformation and that's leading to problems of violence, what's the solution to that? Is it, as I think, more conversation, or is there another alternative? Censorship, perhaps? What is it that you would like to see happen?
Well, I've got to note that people generally have this conversation when they're supporting the free speech of people they agree with and not the people they disagree with. But I think the solution is to cut down on misinformation. I don't think free speech includes the rights to mislead people. I don't think, I think it is legitimate to derogate from the right to free speech to limit misinforming people. And I think the way to deal with the rise of the far right is to cut down on people lying to each other with impunity.
So how do we do that? I suppose what I'm asking is how practically can you do that? Because obviously everyone makes mistakes and everyone says things that are mistaken, and that's part of being human, and particularly now we've all got access to the internet. So what I suppose what I'm asking is, on a practical level, how would you counter misinformation?
Well, I'd like to see politicians held to account properly for deliberately misleading people. And I'd like to see social media companies held to account, not required to sort of whack-a-mole various bits of misinformation, but required to publish their algorithms so those algorithms don't encourage the repetition of misinformation.
Toby, final word to you. Is that fair enough?
No, Sam's talking as if whether or not something is misinformation is completely straightforward. It's something that's apparent to everybody, and there's never going to be any disagreement about that. But as we know, Andrew, often misinformation is just a word people use to describe an opinion of their opponents that they disagree with. And there have been plenty of examples of things which have initially been dismissed as misinformation, like the lab leak hypothesis about the origins of COVID-19, about concerns people expressed about the cognitive decline of Joe Biden, initially dismissed as misinformation, not because they were misinformation, because that was just a way of trying to discredit and delegitimize a point of view you happen to find inconvenient or disagree with. The problem, Sam, is given it's never obvious what is and isn't, or often isn't obvious what is and isn't misinformation, who gets to decide? The authorities, the police, the government? Do you trust them to get it right and never just call something misinformation because it happens to be in their interest to do so? I don't trust them. Surely let people make up their own minds about what's false, what's true, what's misinformation, what's reliable information. And if it's misinformation, it will eventually lose the contest in the public square in a free and open fight.
OK, well, final word to Sam. What do you make of Toby's question there? What do you think of that?
It's pretty easy to determine if a lot of the time if something is misinformation. And I'll give you an example from Toby's website, where he claimed that a person had been imprisoned for 3 years for doing no more than saying anti-establishment things. When you actually look at the report of that, it is clear that that person was imprisoned because he repeatedly encouraged violence against Muslims.
Well, since you've now cited something that Toby published, I have to give him a right to reply.
There was a BBC report about why a particular woman who was sent to prison for things she said on social media. And in that BBC report on the BBC News website, it said one of the things, not the only thing, but one of the things she'd been sent down for was anti-establishment rhetoric. Now, if you're telling me that was misinformation produced by the BBC, maybe you're right. But in that case, I made the mistake of trusting the BBC.
OK. Now, listen, the pair of you, look, we could argue all night, and I'm sure we would, and quite enjoy it. But I really appreciate you both coming on. It's great to hear different perspectives. Sam Foles and Toby Young, thank you so much. And next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to discuss whether the decline of religion has given rise to wokeness. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's an improvement in our weather as we head into Monday, a bank holiday for some of us. There'll still be some showers around, but more in the way of sunny spells, and it'll just feel a little warmer. Low pressure moving off the scene, a brief ridge of high pressure moving in ahead of the next weather system, which does come in late Monday and into Tuesday, but an improvement anyway. Through the rest of the day, overnight into Monday morning, there's still quite a lot of cloud across the UK. This band of cloud across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland into northern England will continue to give some showery rain. Elsewhere, mixture of clear spells and showers, and temperatures milder than they have been of late, generally staying in the mid-teens. So mixed start to Monday morning. Bright skies across much of Scotland with scattering of showers, particularly across the north and the west, driest towards Aberdeenshire. On the fresh side, temperatures around 9 to 11 Celsius. Just Northern Ireland seeing a mixture of sunny spells and showers, but this cloudier zone across northern England into Wales giving some showery outbreaks of rain in places. Brighter for the rest of England, but some showers across southeast England initially clearing away, along with a brisk breeze here. But then generally through Monday, winds falling light. We'll see a scattering of showers through the day, largely across the northern part of England into Northern Ireland, North Wales, southern Scotland, elsewhere. Dry, but some sunny spells, and with lighter winds it will feel warmer. Temperatures lifting to the high teens to low 20s, up to around 23 across southeast England. On Tuesday, wet and windy weather spreading in across the north and the west of the UK. Some of this rain will be heavy at times, but further south and east, we'll start to import some warm air. Winds coming in from the south, plenty of sunny spells and temperatures lifting towards the mid-20s, perhaps even higher by Wednesday, approaching 28, 29 Celsius before turning cooler again on Thursday.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Debates surrounding the role of religion in society and community have been reignited by the rise of wokeism. Some have argued that the decline in religious practices and worship has fuelled or exacerbated this rise of wokeism, a belief system which provides individuals with a set of ideas they can invest in other words, a different kind of religion. Now, author and cultural writer Helen Pluckrose counters that view in a recent article that she wrote, and she's here to discuss it. Helen, welcome to the show.
Hello, Andrew.
So, a lot of people have said this, that what they have perceived within wokeness is a kind of proselytising, a kind of religious-like intolerance, a view that you're either with us or against us, excommunicating people for heresy or wrongthink. There seems to be a lot of parallels, and I myself am guilty of writing about these parallels. But is it the case, as many commentators claim, that the decline of Christianity in the West has left a kind of vacuum into which wokeism has emerged?
No, I don't think that this is how ideas work in a society. I don't think that the way that the people have been speaking as though we have a God-shaped hole or nature abhors a vacuum. This... There are always a number of ideas in society. There are always people who are inclined to be zealous. The majority of people are inclined not to be zealous. We've seen a decline of religion over the last century. Now, the argument I'm specifically taking issue with is the one that's mostly coming out of the US. And it is saying that it is the decline of religion in the US, which is correlating with the rise of wokeness. And I have written a number of times to ask Americans to look outside their own borders for this, because if the decline of religion specifically caused something like wokeness, the last place we would expect to see it would be in the United States.
I mean, that's a very interesting point, isn't it? That, America and evangelical Christianity in particular is booming over there. And yet, as you say, a lot of these theories seem to emerge, particularly from higher education over there. So you see that as a sort of... the two cannot coexist. It cannot be the case.
I mean, it's certainly it's unlikely that somebody who is very devoutly Orthodox Christian would also be woke, but there are an awful lot of Christians who are woke. I've been people that have reached out to me for support with wokeism in their churches, particularly Baptist, evangelical, Protestant, not so much in Catholic churches.
Yes.
So I think things are really just much more messy than this. If, as I think that the underlying argument goes that humans have certain social and psychological needs that can only be filled by a big grand narrative, a transcendental experience, a community. And so when religion dies or declines, then something else with all those elements must rush into that.
Now, that's something that's been said a lot about Ireland, because, of course, up until relatively recently, the Catholic Church was so dominant in Ireland. And as that faded, and as we got the vote for same-sex marriage and that kind of thing, suddenly wokeism has come into Ireland in a big way. I mean, I was in Dublin recently, and the Progress Pride flag was absolutely everywhere, like a new state religion. It was even etched onto a door in the dial in the Irish Parliament that I saw, permanently etched there. That does feel like some new belief system has hegemony now.
I would not argue with that. A few years ago did a panel, is critical social justice a religion? And we came to the conclusion no, but it has so many qualities in common with it that it could be called a quasi-religion. And this is something, a different way to think about this. I think humans do have certain social and psychological needs. We are drawn to overarching frameworks, and religion is one of them.
Yes.
So if a religion fades, there are still going to be people who are going to be wanting this community. They're going to be wanting a simple sort of good and bad narrative. What should I do to achieve the right outcome? And wokeness is something they could pick onto. They could also pick onto something else, nationalism or
any ideology.
Yes,
yeah.
and anything. And this is where I think people don't seem to always pick up that we have always had a number of different kinds of beliefs. It isn't that if you are Christian, that's filled up all of your space now. You're God's, and now you have no other ideologies. No, you may well be as well a conservative. You may well be very patriotic. You may love a particular football team. You may feel very strongly about veganism. We always have these strong values and beliefs, and the idea that it's just sort of linear. We have religion and that satisfies most people, then that declines and something goes whoosh in and it's something horrible.
I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I just wonder about the rise of critical social justice, as you call it, or wokeism, as most people call it. Is it just something to do with the idea that within human nature there is something that lends ourselves to authoritarianism? There's an appeal to the authoritarian instinct that we have to kind of suppress through civilization, through that process. And hence people want to censor ideas that they don't like, or harass people who have the wrong views. It feels like it is an authoritarian project.
It is. It feels very much like it is that human drive. We want to have a common good. We want to have a social contract. We want to have shared values. There's this feeling that if we can get everybody on the same page with this, then the fighting will stop, things will get better. Wokeness is one attempt at a common good that it's trying to bring people around. It's doing it in a horrendously authoritarian and irrational way and alienating a lot of people. So we are certainly seeing, I think, the rise of people cleaving more strongly to other systems and saying, look, here is another common good. This common good is actually better. This common good isn't good. But
Can I ask you about, you're very specifically, you've written a lot about liberalism. You've got a new book out called The Counterweight Handbook, which is a fantastic book, which helps people who are facing struggles in the workplace with wokeism. So I think if anyone is watching who is facing those struggles, this is a great resource. But what is it about liberalism that you think can sort of resolve this or help us through this at a time when a lot of people think liberalism has failed?
Well, I think with liberalism has that negative quality. It's the overarching thing of essentially leaving people alone unless they're hurting you. So and a positive encouragement of the free exchange of ideas. So in itself, it does not have that ideological core that people can get very inspired by and think they know right and wrong for. But the ways in which it can help us in our current situation is to try to navigate the rising authoritarianisms that we're seeing now. Wokeism definitely is a very, very prominent one. It's the one that I focused on. It's not the only one. We do see authoritarianism on the right. We do see it in Islamism. We see it in pockets all over the place.
Well, it's because the far right is an authoritarian movement as well. Islamism is an authoritarian movement. All of these things have that shared...
And you wouldn't say, particularly with the far right, with the Christian nationalists, clearly the decline of religion hasn't caused them to produce what Neil Shemvey and other Christian conservatives are calling the woke right. So I think this simplistic thinking stops us getting at it. What I think that we do need more of is community. We need to actually have a stronger sense of community again, which doesn't mean that everybody has to have exactly the same religion, but that we can and do feel invested in each other's well-being. I think social media has played a big part into this. A lot of people are getting dispersed all over the place. Trying to get everybody to go back to Christianity isn't a realistic goal, even if it wasn't for the fact that God continues to appear not to exist.
Well, there we go. On that bombshell, Helen Pluckrose, thanks so much for joining me. Next up on Free Speech Nation, I'm sure I'm going to get lots of letters about that. We're going to be looking at our social sensations. We're going to get our panel to answer your unfiltered dilemmas, so please don't go anywhere.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
One local cricket team was made up entirely of one family, the Jollens.
The Newmarket midweek seconds played Thurlow and Old Mill Greenian seconds, captained by, here we go, James Jolland. He played alongside family members Henry, Freddie, George, Jack, Archie, Ryan, Brandon and Daniel. Even if slightly controversial, one of the umpires was a Jolland to Stephen the umpire.
Yes, well, the Jolland family mostly live in Wickenbrook in Suffolk and have played for 4 years for Dullingham Village team before it merged with Newmarket. So that's the entire backstory. We're delighted to be joined now by Captain James Jolland and teammate and brother Nick Jolland. Really good to see you both this morning. This is incredible. How did you get the entire family involved in cricket?
Well, we started the club about 3 years ago, and it was more friends and family. But then it had this opportunity of this week to get everyone involved, because everyone was back and they all played cricket, various levels, and the youngest being 12, George.
Oh.
And we were all available, so we thought 1 week we'd do the whole team.
You booted the friends out for 1 week only?
Yeah, they were very good about it. They come and watched. They supported us.
How did the other team feel about having an umpire with related ties?
Well, the captain of the Thurlow is one of our friends. We do know him, so he was fine with it, and there was no controversial decisions at all.
I think it's a fantastic strategy.
No, yeah.
You could plant somebody.
That's the way
in a position of authority. It's a great idea.
Oh, look, here's the scorecard we can see on the screen with all of your names on there. Some fantastic English names on there. How does it get between the family members? Is it very, very competitive between you all?
As you get older, you work on that, don't you? And you keep that competitiveness out of it. And it's really to play with your sons. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, it's a lovely
We've
thing
all
to
got
do.
sons in it. That's why we do it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. It's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral this week on social media. First up, it's this video. See, that's why you don't go to festivals. You know, so that's green fields in Cheshire. Have you ever been to a festival like that, Leo?
Yeah, I've been to loads of festivals, and the ones in Scotland are usually like that just as a matter of course. I think, but if you've got your £10 tent from Decathlon, that's not going to be able to deal with this.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? They're all cheap tents these days, and they all leave them behind because they're so cheap. It's more expensive to unpack them. So they sort of deserve what they're getting, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Blooming young people.
Having fun.
Yeah, I know.
In fields.
Don't remember any of it, actually. I did
Did you do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I did. I quite enjoyed that.
Oh, I didn't. I was in Latitude in a tent one year. I hated it.
Were you doing comedy?
Well, it's meant to be. But let's not talk about that now. It was a very bad experience. They had coloured sheep. They dyed the sheep pink. I thought it was disgusting. Anyway, it's just animal abuse. Let's move on. We've got your unfiltered dilemmas. A dilemma came in from Alan. Thank you, Alan, for emailing. You've said, I went for an X-ray last week and I was not asked if I was pregnant. I am a male, but they should have asked. Should I sue my local health authority for bad practice? Well, new NHS guidelines are saying that you have to ask men, not even people who identify as men or women, just men.
Yeah, and it's a great idea because there's not enough paperwork involved with the NHS.
That's true.
So having extra boxes to tick and, you know, asking a 73-year-old man if he's pregnant, I mean, I can't think of a better use for NHS time.
Absolutely. Inclusivity. Fair enough, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I am going to say yes every time. Yeah. They are going to have to prove me wrong, Andrew.
Absolutely. OK, well, let's get another dilemma from Catherine. Catherine says, I've got a new boss at work who's usually really great, but the other day he left our shift early to go out with our colleagues while I had to close up shop by myself. How do I make it clear that I'm not impressed my senior chose to abandon me when he should have stepped up? Now, that's a tricky one, because you don't want to get in trouble with the boss, do you? And, you know, he obviously doesn't like her very much.
No, he doesn't like her. She maybe smells, so she probably ought to check. She probably ought to check that first.
Yeah.
That'd be my check if you smell. Ask someone you
Good
trust.
advice from Paul. Sound, solid advice. Let's get some more from Leo. What do you think?
No, I still think go with the smell thing.
Yeah.
Sounds. I'm getting the sense this person smells.
OK. Well, all we've done there, we haven't solved your problem, we've just insulted you. So that's our job done. Let's move on to another dilemma. This comes in from David. David says, my boyfriend has decided to grow a mullet, as that is the new trendy thing to do. I think it's the ugliest hairstyle possible. I don't think I can be with him if he makes that choice. How do I tell him it's a bad idea? That's quite extreme, though, isn't it, to leave your boyfriend over a haircut? I would say this isn't real love.
Yeah, and also, it's not the new trendy thing to do. The new trendy thing to do is to transition. So I want her boyfriend to get some breasts put in. And then at least when she leaves him, he's got some breasts to play with.
You're confusing me with all the genders and pronouns. I think it's a gay couple here, Leo. But, you know, that's your...
They can probably incorporate that, then.
That's your heteronormativity showing. What do you think, Paul?
Well, I always think it's best to talk to your partner rather than put it on national TV.
No, I disagree.
I know it's our job, Andrew, but this is ridiculous.
I like this. I think just send us your problems and then, you know, have a row.
We'll sort it out.
I mean, they'll be watching it, won't they? And then they're going to have a row now. That's what this was all about. You just wanted to stimulate that argument, didn't you? That was what was going on there.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a haircut. It can grow out, can't it? So.
And also a mullet. Yeah, exactly. It's a mullet. Who cares? Yeah. It's not like you're getting, like, one of those nose rings or something. I don't know. I looked at you when you did that.
Yeah. I wouldn't give him extra ideas.
No, that's true. Well, look, that's all we got time for. Thank you so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation this week. This was the week when an Australian judge ruled that sex is changeable, apparently. More people were imprisoned for unpleasant social media posts. And it was revealed that the Labour Party has ditched the new law to protect free speech on campus because it didn't want to upset the Chinese government. Thanks to my panel, Leo Kearse and Paul Cox, and all of my brilliant guests this evening. And by the way, if you want to join us live here in the studio and be part of the audience, that's easily done. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com. That's there on the screen. You can come along. We've got food, we've got drink, we've got good company. And stay tuned, by the way. I say good company. Yeah. It's Paul and Leo and people like that. But, you know, we're nice in our own way. We'll keep you entertained. But stay tuned, because Ben Leo tonight is coming up next. And also, please don't forget, Headliners is on every single night on GB News at 11 o'clock. That is the late-night paper preview show that goes through the next day's news stories for you, so you don't have to bother reading them. And it's all comedians as well, so it won't be boring. So it's people like Leo and Paul and our other roster, Bruce Devlin, Lewis Schaefer. He's a bit mad. Maybe avoid the nights that he's on. But lots of people like that. So please do check out Headliners. I host it a couple of nights a week, but not tonight. And by the way, actually, that's all I've got time for. Thank you so much for watching Free Speech Nation. I'll see you next week.
warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's an improvement in our weather as we head into Monday, a bank holiday for some of us. There'll still be some showers around, but more in the way of sunny spells, and it'll just feel a little warmer. Low pressure moving off the scene, a brief ridge of high pressure moving in ahead of the next weather system, which does come in late Monday and into Tuesday, but an improvement anyway. Through the rest of the day, overnight into Monday morning, there's still quite a lot of cloud across the UK. This band of cloud across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland into northern England will continue to give some showery rain. Elsewhere, mixture of clear spells and showers, and temperatures milder than they have been of late, generally staying in the mid-teens. So mixed start to Monday morning. Bright skies across much of Scotland with scattering of showers, particularly across the north and the west, driest towards Aberdeenshire. On the fresh side, temperatures around 9 to 11 Celsius. Just Northern Ireland seeing a mixture of sunny spells and showers, but this cloudier zone across northern England into Wales giving some showery outbreaks of rain in places. Brighter for the rest of England, but some showers across southeast England initially clearing away, along with a brisk breeze here, but then generally through Monday, winds falling light. We'll see a scattering of showers through the day, largely across the northern part of England into Northern Ireland, North Wales, southern Scotland, elsewhere. Dry, but some sunny spells, and with lighter winds it will feel warmer. Temperatures lifting to the high teens to low 20s, up to around 23 across southeast England. On Tuesday, wet and windy weather spreading in across the north and the west of the UK. Some of this rain will be heavy at times, but further south and east, we'll start to import some warm air. Winds coming in from the south, plenty of sunny spells and temperatures lifting towards the mid-20s, perhaps even higher by Wednesday, approaching 28, 29 Celsius before turning cooler again on Thursday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.